to do a first assessment of nature-based solutions that would be applicable in a certain location. This is what I'll present to you briefly just now. I'm going to tell you what the scan is. I'm going to show a scan that we did for Abidjan, and I'm going to show a scan that we did for a coastal scan for the Gambia, which was an exercise that we did internally. So what is this nature-based solution scan, and how does this work? So the opportunity scan, as we call it, is a location-specific application of nature-based solutions with the objective of start to answering the questions. What are opportunities for investments in NBS in cities and in coastal zones? So basically what the scan does is that it uses geospatial analysis, and this is data that is publicly available with tools such as Google Earth and other tools that you can have this publicly available geospatial data. And what it does, it zooms into specific areas to look at the specific conditions and of that specific area, to start looking into what would be nature-based solutions that would be applicable for that specific context. So this NBS scan is not an in-depth technical study, but it's a conversation starter. It's a way to do kind of a first step to start thinking, okay, looking at the conditions of this area, these are the type of nature-based solutions that we could use there. And then this is followed by discussions with stakeholders, with in-depth studies, to be able to see, okay, this makes sense, let's go with this NBS or that one. But I'll give you more examples in a bit. So the NBS scan uses the different categories that we saw yesterday, the ones that we have on the catalog, and one more that has been developed for the coastal scan that also looks at reef ecosystems. The NBS scan also uses the different benefits that we also explored yesterday to try to assess what would be feasible benefits in specific contexts. To make that a bit more concrete, I'm going to show a case that we did for Abidjan earlier this year with the city in a project that already the World Bank is currently developing with the city of Abidjan. So what's the methodology that we use? And so the first step that we do is, okay, we need to understand what the problem is. And for that, we use the discussions that are currently happening with the city, with the ministry and national governments, different stakeholders, to try to understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve here. And in this case, it was exposure to flooding, heat, lack of access to green spaces, and this would be the problem that we'll be trying to solve, see if we could solve with an NBS. The second step is the mapping of NBS suitability. So because we have so many categories of NBS, not all of them are applicable, we do a first short listing with the city, and we say, okay, let's for this prioritization, let's focus on a few NBS that we think are more relevant. And in that case specifically, these were urban forests, green corridors, open green spaces, bioretention areas, and stream renaturation. We said, let's focus on this 5 for this analysis. And then there's a third step of the analysis, which is looking at the benefits. Again, as we saw before in the previous slide, there are so many types of benefits that we can think about. So we also did this prioritization. Which benefits do we want to prioritize here? And in that case, for Abidjan, we look at first reducing pluvial flooding. So in our calculation, we use this as the main benefit that we wanted to achieve with a weight of 70%. And then we also use 2 other co-benefits with a shorter weight that would heat stress reduction, and health and recreation. So what does that mean in practical terms? So first, on understanding the problem, we look into where to apply NBS to reduce pluvial flooding. So here, as we can see, we were using results on exposure to flood hazard distribution using a hydrological model, and then the scan can identify where to apply nature-based solutions to reduce flood hazards. So this was the first step. And then the other problem that we wanted to solve is the one for heat. So where do people get the highest heat stress in the city? So this map is presenting the different levels of exposure to heat stress for different neighborhoods in Abidjan. Again, all of this is using geospatial data that we have available online. The third question that we wanted to answer is access to green spaces. Where do people need more recreational areas? And then this, again, in the different shades of green, is where we saw that there was a major need of that. So these were the kind of 3 maps of the different problems that we were trying to solve. And then, again, the second step is looking at suitability. Okay, now that we know, we've mapped those areas, now we can start thinking, okay, considering the characteristics of those areas, looking into how much space is there available there, are there any rivers around, are there existing parks, existing areas. So looking at the characteristics of those areas, we can start thinking what types of solutions are applicable for those specific areas. So in this map, for example, you can really see detail there because it's a bit small, but it's showing the opportunities for green space protection as well as NBS creation. So as we talked as we talked yesterday, there was both the opportunity of protecting spaces. So the map was showing, okay, there are some areas here, let's look into protecting those areas, and where there isn't, there is then the opportunity for creation, and then we look at the characteristics and we think, okay, here are some areas that we can create something instead. And then we also look, for instance, where are the areas that we can look for the creation of urban forests. Specifically, again, we were looking at the different types of NBS. And then, yes, that we had been prioritized, looking at the specific characteristics of that city and the problems we were trying to solve, where could this different types of NBS be applied? And then, last but not least, we look into the modeling of the benefits. And then again, what you can see in this map is the distribution of NBS that provide the most benefit, considering the type of benefits that the city is looking for. So what you have there, I think in the shade of pink, is mostly on green corridors. As you can see, it's kind of, you can see that these are streets or avenues. So these would be green corridors where you could potentially apply NBS. Again, as we're talking about an area that is very densely populated, green corridors are a way of increasing nature in that specific location. We also see the space for some urban forests or green spaces that are the green points that you see there as well. And then, well, these were the ones that were kind of the ones that were showing up the most when we put all that information together at once. The scan itself, you also have those maps kind of broken down into the different types of NBS that we're looking for. So, which is what you can see here. So then again, we were first looking at the different types of NBS. So for instance, on the first map, that is the purple one, these are the areas that are the most relevant ones for flooding. The one in red are the ones for heat, and the green ones are the ones for green spaces for recreation. So we also have this map that I showed before is kind of combining everything this map here actually separating for different type of solution that of problem that we're trying to solve. And then also, just to give you an idea, we also, for the areas that we see that are very much the ones that have been considered high priority for the scan, we zoom more into. So here we have one specific area, one specific neighborhood, and we do that for a few of them that are considered the priorities. We look more in detail where this type of solution can be applied. Again, just to reiterate, this is something that is kind of a first step, is a conversation starter. It doesn't mean that is the ultimate solution. So what we did is, for instance, what we've done is the World Bank has already an engagement with the city. So in the case we go and we present and we say, look, a first analysis is showing us this. What do you think? And then we can also, we can do this kind of a follow-up and more thorough studies based once we have this kind of conversation starter. Is basically that's what the idea of the scan is that we can start having this engagement. And then just wanted to show you a couple of slides. We just started doing as well a coastal scan. The one that I just presented was an urban one. This one for Gambia is not something that we've presented to the city. This is just an internal exercise that we did with many coastal areas all over the world when we were preparing the scan. And one of these areas that we did for this internal exercise was Gambia. Then, of course, considering where we are, we thought this would be the most interesting one to present to you here. Again, the steps that we do, very, very similar. So first we understand the problem. We look into what would be feasible NBS in that area, and we think about benefits. Again, for this case specifically, this is all very abstract. It's just an internal exercise that we did for which type of NBS to choose or benefits, etc. But this is the type of result that we can get to. For instance, it's a little bit dark, I'm not sure you can see, but in that area there is a bit kind of light beige. These are kind of sandy shore, these are salt marshes that could be applied there. On the other side we have sandy shores, and there's a darker shade of green on the right hand side that would be also mangroves that could be applied in that specific location. And then again, this figure shows as well, for instance, how a location in which we could use, even zooming more in detail, for mangrove. And we see there in the green area, we have an area for mangrove protection, and the blue one would be for enhancement. So where we can, one area is where there is already mangrove, we can protect it there, and the other one is enhancement, which is probably what that means is that is an area there's a little bit of degradation, so we can actually look into enhancing it to also be further strengthened and protected. I'm going to stop here. The idea for this was just to give you an idea of a type of tool that the World Bank has available, again, as a conversation starter for NBS. I know, especially when, it's a new concept, can seem overwhelming. What can we do? Where some places already have an idea of where to start, but in other cases, this is a way to start thinking about applying NBS into an urban context as well as in a coastal context. We are looking also in now that we have this coastal scan, looking into doing scans that are integrated urban and coastal for cities such as the ones that we've been discussing here today, that are cities in coastal areas that have both the realities of urbanization but also of coastal erosion, degradation, among others. I hope this is something that enlightens the conversation and can illustrate a little bit more in terms of tools that are available. And I'm not sure if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, I'll thank you for your attention.